You're watching the Metaphysical Mentor podcast with Michael Philpott. We are recording. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. This is going to be another fun podcast, and this is actually going to tie into the podcast I had previously. And we're going to be talking about a little bit about trauma, about nervous systems, what we can do to reset them and everything. And Amy, how are you, my friend?
Mike, I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show.
And yeah, I'm really happy that you're on. It's been a while. We were trying back and forth to get our schedules figured out, and finally we got it in the new year, and we're on season 2, by the way. Thank you. And yeah, so one of the things I always found interesting about your background and as a first responder, and you have to deal with a lot of trauma. Now, as most people understand, it's a very difficult job. I think most people have an understanding, but they don't really understand how difficult in some of the things, because you're always seeing people at their worst. And through your own experiences, did you start getting into the mental health aspect of it first before you became a first responder, or was it something afterwards that you just started doing?
So great question. And thank you for the acknowledgement of how challenging the job can be, because I do recognize that a lot of people might have the attitude of, well, that's what you signed up for, and so we're not going to feel bad about it, right? But yes, there's a level of that. You do sign up for that. And, if you talk to most first responders, it's usually a calling. There's this greater need beyond yourself to actually help humanity and help the community and help the people around you. And to your point, it is often the worst times in someone's life if they're calling an ambulance or calling police or fire, And so, yes, there's aspects of the job that you do sign up for, and those are things that you kind of expect. However, when you're constantly putting your bodies in the state of fight or flight, I don't know if anyone's really talking about the amount of trauma exposure that you actually get. Because I think there has been that mentality for so long of, well, this is what you signed up for, suck it up, buttercup attitude. But for me to be healthy in this career long term, we need to change the narrative a little bit and understand and recognize that, you know what, if you're in this profession, you are going to experience some really challenging times and see and hear things that you don't expect, and it's going to weigh on you in different ways that you'd never imagined that it would affect you. Because at the end of the day, even if they put on the uniform and you go into work, at the end of the day, we're still human, and you're going to be affected in some way or another. And it doesn't mean that you don't have resilience or not. If anything, you have greater resilience because you can move through some of these situations and come out stronger on the other end. But what we need to do is have the conversation so that people can prepare themselves in better ways beforehand, during, and then to come out healthy afterwards. So to your point, did I start this work about mental health before or after getting hired into this profession? A little bit of yes and no for both. So I got hired back in 2011. I started doing yoga and mindfulness work back in 2008. But I've always been in this wellness health journey, just trying to understand myself better. And I feel like I was born with a higher level of consciousness. So I had a self-awareness, and I wanted to learn more about that. So I was always intrigued and interested. And I think that because when I got into policing, because I had that background, I was able to be more aware of maybe how to take care of myself, if that makes sense. But even though I had a level of awareness, there was still a lot I didn't know about how to deal with overexposure of stress, trauma, dealing with the effects of shift work and the circadian rhythm changes within your own body.
Oh, that's so shit. That is it's the worst. Shift work. I just had this conversation.
Yes.
It is havoc. And I used to travel a lot for work. So my circadian rhythm, I was going overseas all the time, and it freaking sucks. And I don't know how you guys do it on a rotation. I don't know if it's 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. How does that work on your rotations?
No, so every police service is going to be different, or every first responder service is going to be different. I think the majority are 4 on, 4 off. which is 2-day shifts, 2 night shifts, 12-hour schedules. That's if you don't get any type of overtime, and that doesn't count your waking up early and commuting and getting ready. So they're long days.
Yeah.
But so I think it's doesn't mess up your system as much as some of the other shifts do. But the idea is to understand how to eat and manage your energy levels and your sleep during that phase. So you want to try to anchor to a day shift. Anyway, these are things that I did not know when I
Because
first got
they don't
hired. They
teach it.
weren't
It's not like it's in
teaching.
its curriculum when you go to
No,
police college, right? It's like,
no.
no, it's like the Highway Traffic Act and a few other things that you really ingrain in you.
Yes,
And it's like, here's the policies and procedures.
yes.
Don't pull your gun if you don't have to. And yeah, and here you go. It's kind of like trial by fire. Here you go. Here's your training
Yeah.
officer. And there you go.
Here's
Go
all
serve
the
the public.
information, yeah, that you need. Here's all the information you need to do the job, but not how to take care of yourself. And so I definitely think that there's a light that's been shone on the area, and so we're doing better within our industries. But there's still so much more that we can be doing and should be doing to make sure that people who are in this profession they're aware of the knowledge, how to take care of themselves, and then as an employer, that they're supporting their people and they're making the best decisions for the health and well-being long term, so that people can retire healthy. Because ultimately what it's going to do is take years off your back end of your life, so you'll have less of a retirement. Because there's research that shows that circadian misalignment, it's listed in the World Health Organization actually, that it's a carcinogen, known carcinogen, causes cancer, Alzheimer's, it causes shorter lifespan,
Really?
health issues. Yes, and it's like, that's if you don't take care of it properly. So what we need to be doing is educating people on how to manage that the best that they can. So anyway, that's just one piece of the many things that encompass some of the challenges that you can experience getting into profession of first responding. So through my own personal experiences, so 5 years in, after dealing with all the circadian misalignment, dealing with, and then we have no energy reserves, then, you're not going to feel like eating healthy. You start to eat bad food late at night, and then your exercising goes because you have no energy. You don't feel like working at 4 a.m. when you just want to be sleeping.
Yeah.
And then plus the stress, some of the, calls, and then sometimes you're dealing with unsavory people in the community that just, have a hate on for you. And even if you're trying to be compassionate, so that could wear on you too, right? When you're being treated a certain way. There's the public scrutiny, there's this expectation that very high performing, it's very fast paced, very competitive too internally. And then you have a lot of leadership, different styles sometimes that can be stressful as well, right?
That's a very polite way of saying that. You're dealing with a bunch of assholes sometimes in command. Okay, I can say that because I'm not. So hopefully nobody in your particular department will pull me over and go, "Hey, that's that guy who was talking about command." And
well, it's like any job though. You're gonna have
that's true.
Some great supervisors or people that you work with, and other times your personalities don't jive, or your leadership style doesn't match up with their management style. So there's going to be a disconnect sometimes. So, and if you think about it, like, you need all walks of life, in the type of work that we do. So you're going to have different personalities that might not mesh well. And so that's where you get, so anyway, there's all these moving parts about the job that can wear you down if you're not armored with some of the proper information. And to my point that I was making, my 5 years in, I was heading down a spiral, and well, I guess I'll share my story.
Yeah, please. Yeah, it's always a perfect.
Why did I start getting into the wellness? So I had the background.
Well, it's just, this is the flow of the show. So we're like, it's, everybody knows the show, right? Who's listening to my show. They all know it goes. I just let the guests do their thing, and we just go with the flow. So yeah, this is really important, because this really gives, what I love to see, and it really is important, is it really gets to see the human side of my guests, because we all have stories. And through our stories and through our traumas and our, problems we face in our life, it helps others to know that, hey, there's somebody out there that went through the same thing. So your story is going to be able to help so many other people, because they're going to go, holy shit, yeah, I get that. I see what she does. So I always say, a high praise and a very much a big thank you when you do tell your story. So the
Mhm.
floor is yours.
All right. So yeah, it's 5 years in. At this point, again, people try to say, oh, okay, the shift work, this and that. You're like, yeah, but you don't really know how to manage it. So, I had dealt with all sorts of different calls. Nothing that really, yeah, some of it was, hard, to deal with, some, kind of gruesome, some of the stuff, but it's like, I kind of moved through that. It didn't really bother me. But I think because I was kind of heading down that road, very like I was averaging maybe 3 4 hours of sleep. The shift work just really got to me. And you can't function when you're not on sleep. And your ability to cope and your ability to just like think and be effective and optimally perform, and your emotional intelligence, like everything kind of gets affected in your, even just how your body detoxifies and how you even feel in your body, right? But anyhow, one of my coworkers, she was one of my really good friends on my shift. We actually got hired around the same time, and then we went to the Ontario Police College together. And then we ended up on the same shift, which was amazing because we were like, oh my gosh, we get to work together. Because they move people around, and sometimes you don't have a choice. And I moved up to the Greater Toronto area when I got hired. So I was living away from home, and so her family became like my second family. And so we became close, and I got a phone call one day, and she had 3 children at the time, and her middle daughter was 12 at the time, and she's like, yeah, she's just died in an ATV accident. And I just remember being in disbelief, and it was the hardest thing to kind of take in. And it was one of those moments where you just dropped to the floor and just like, oh my God, like what just happened? And so I drove up there. I moved in with them for about 2 3 weeks, just offering support to her and her husband and her other kids, and just kind of help plan the funeral, write the eulogy. And it was very challenging for me to go through, because not only was I trying to support my friend and witness it changing her before my eyes, because that's just, no parent ever wants to go through something like that. It's like the worst possible moment of your life. And then at the same time I was grieving the loss of someone who's like a niece to me. And so I wasn't next to kin, so obviously I go back to work. And then as soon as I go back to work, I had a series of calls that were back to back that were kind of triggers for me, because I was in this like overwhelming feeling of grief in my personal life. And then I feel like when you're exposed, then you're in this type of job profession. So like in your regular life, yeah, you're greatly affected, but then you have to go to work, and then you're dealing with even more grief sometimes, and that can be very compounding,
Yes,
just really affect you in a different way. And so the first call was, I had a 7-year-old that died from choking. First on scene for that, and went to the hospital. And then the second one was a double fatal car accident where it was a young 20-year-old couple, and it was so gruesome. And I didn't even know, it was one of the worst ones I've been to, and I didn't even know there was 2 people in the car at first. So there was that whole thing. And then the third one after that was a Good Samaritan. This elderly man was trying to stop a road rage incident. There was this guy that was driving through the parking lot, almost hit a baby stroller as they're like taking the baby out, goes in to try to reach in and turn the car off, and anyway got reversed and got ran over. And so I had to do the death notification for all these kids around the same age. So it was like back to back to back, very compounded within like a period of 3 months or something like that. And I could tell that there was a difference in me. I did not know what was going on. I didn't have understanding about trauma or overexposure of stress. All I knew was like I was not okay. Like I didn't feel like myself. I felt super over emotional. Like, so I would deal with the call, I'd be fine. And then I'd get to my car and I would just bawl my eyes out. I felt like I wasn't really in control of my emotions. I'm like, what's wrong with me? I was very self-isolating. I didn't want to be around people. I was just kind of really disassociating, very fatigued, like no energy. And I feel like a lot of people sometimes will go through levels of like anxiety or depression, and like, even if it's not a lot, like maybe small amounts, where you can feel overwhelmed, or it's like, what's wrong with me? Like, I just want to feel like myself. I don't know what's happening. And so that was the first time in my life where I could understand for the first time how someone within this profession could be affected, or their mental health could be affected, or it could get worse it can go down this one path, and someone might end up getting post-traumatic stress disorder or post an occupational stress injury or something like that, right?
Well, it's
And
even,
again, I think,
yeah, it's even worse. I hear too, as well, is the level of suicides now, which is
well,
something
and
which
yes,
is something I wasn't aware of with first responders. And I was brought to that attention. I'm going, holy
yes,
shit, really? And
yeah. And it can snowball if it's not, and so I was curious. I was like, obviously I wasn't myself and I didn't understand it, but it's not even a choice. It's literally your body's response. It's like you're stuck in this fight or flight. You could be like hyper vigilant. You're like, your body doesn't, like, you could be startled easily, or like, it's just your body's reaction to these experiences, right? And sometimes too, when you're in these high stressful incidences, it's not even your thinking mind that's remembering the experience. It's literally your limbic system. It's through your five senses. So none of that stuff I really knew, which is, so I think it was about 8 months, about 8 months or so, and I was still like not feeling like myself. And then I'm like, I need to do something about this. And at the time, I was not aware of the differences between some of the supports that were out there, like wellness support. So we've got different programs that are available for, like, there's like a employee family assistance program, which is kind of like free counseling, it's a counselor. But they might not necessarily have first responder experience, or maybe that respect. And then there's psychotherapists that more like talk therapy. And then there's like psychologists that have other therapy modalities that can help reframe certain things or help you move, because they went to school and they have more perspective on just, and a lot of it's temporary too, right? It's just how to help you move through a challenging time in your life. And then you're like, okay after that. But sometimes you just need added support. And I wasn't aware of those different wellness supports at the time. So I did reach out to the EAFP because they were promoting that a lot. And I was like, oh, okay, I can talk to this counselor. But the person didn't have no knowledge about the first responder community and kind of the extra stuff that we deal with. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, at least I get to maybe talk to this guy a little bit about what happened with, but it did not make me feel better. Like, I was waiting for this aha moment of him to tell me, tell me what to do, make me feel better. And it just didn't work. So, so I decided to so what I wanted to understand was what's happening. And if I'm in this profession for the next 30 years, like, I know I'm not going to be the only one that's ever experienced this. And like, I wanted to figure out, how do I work shift work, overexposure, stress and trauma, plus all the daily stuff that we deal with in our personal lives. And then how can we still feel good in our bodies, be healthy, and like last? So I decided to go to Thailand for a month solo. I backpacked. It was this whole wellness trip I went on. I was
you basically
really,
just said, screw it. And just like,
that's it, I'm out of here. No. I wanted answers, So I intentionally went there to learn about tension release exercises, different types of yoga postures and movements that can actually help remove trauma buildup that's in your nervous system, how to rebalance your nervous system, how to detoxify your body. And even if that's not just through like diet and exercise, but even just like emotional releases to detoxify your body. So I went up into the mountains with the monks and learned all the different types of meditation and how it, so sitting, laying, the focus, all the different ones, and how it changes, changes, or you can recalibrate your nervous system, but also your mind and your body, how you can change those systems. So that was really my focus. I was on a mission after that to just really figure myself out and understand trauma and stress and what it's actually doing in our bodies. And then it just blew my mind. I'm like, why are we not having these conversations, and why is this not being taught to people who are getting into this job? So
you think
what I really
now,
want,
do you think, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you on this, but do you think it's to a point where the big wigs and the college people are starting to realize this has to be an integrated part into the learning process, into colleges or into the different departments? Like, it has to be like almost like a mandatory thing. Like, okay, hey, we got to get this in there. Or they're still going, yeah, we'll just keep it. We'll have it here, but we're not going to worry about it too much. And it's there if you need it, but it's not going to be a mandatory thing.
So I do think there's been a shift with, in what I've been trying to do is really bring more mindfulness and yoga into policing. Some people might say, well, what the heck does that have to do with policing? But it has everything really to do with policing, because it's, why are we not taking care of our nervous system, right? Why are we not rebalancing ourselves, into these experiences? So yes, I think that there's a recognition that there's a need for this, and how we've been doing business, needs to change. I think it also helped too that there was the report that came back. There was the coroner's report from a bunch of different suicides that had happened in the policing industry. And that report shed some light on some of the gaps that were identified, and how we need to start streamlining well-being at the forefront a little bit more within our industry. So there were mandates that were put forward to have basic wellness programs implemented. I believe it was by June of 2021 last year. So there's strides that are being made, but there's still a lot of work to be done, and we need many people doing the work. And people need to be educated on that too, to be able to share that information. So I think slowly the needle's moving. But yeah, the education with the circadian rhythms needed. Mindfulness
Let's talk about
tools.
that. Let's talk about the circadian rhythm for a lot of people who are listening out there. They may not be, I mean, we've heard that term. So when you talk about the circadian rhythm, what are you really talking about?
Yeah, so our bodies operate on a timed system, like a clock basis, where it's really geared by daylight and nighttime. So naturally, all of our organ systems and just how we operate, our metabolism, our hormones, our energy levels, everything, and even our sleep patterns, right, are dictated by if it's daylight or if it's at nighttime. And so our bodies are not designed, they're not made to be up 24/7, and they're not made to be eating 24/7. There's these timed optimal windows that meet the very intelligent systems in our body that need to be aligned properly. And when you throw that out of alignment, when you try to do the opposite, it wreaks havoc on your system, wreaks havoc on your body, and you will have negative health outcomes from it if you do not sync properly and if you're not aware of these things. So one major point is that actually you need a minimum sleep window of 8 hours so that you can get a minimum of actual sleep time of 7 hours, because you don't fully sleep the whole time. Sometimes you wake up and you move around, but as you get older, you start to lose some of that sleep too. And I think it's not necessarily always because of age. I think we have a lot of bad habits, and then we never fix them through our adult life. And then as we get into older adulthood, then we're on these like bad habit patterns. So you really want to try to be waking up around the same time and going to bed around the same time so that you can get that optimal sleep. And the reason why you need that much time is because your body goes into this detoxifying mode when you're sleeping, and there's all these cycles in your brain that wash your brain of just like toxins and everything. And that's where our memory gets inputted into our brain. All these systems happen when you're sleeping. And if you don't have the certain amount that you need, then you can have long-term health effects. It's really bad. Apparently, even if you get one less hour a night, 3 consecutive nights in a row, it's like pulling an all-nighter, like you've had no sleep at all.
Yeah, I've had that lots of times where it's like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I can't get to sleep. I can't do this. And I'm up, all different things. And, one of the things I would just want to let the listeners know that even though Amy and I are talking about first responders, this can apply to anybody who works, who does shift work, or just having trauma in their life. So I just want you to really understand this. So, but yeah, definitely the circadian rhythm thing. I mean, it wreaks havoc. I mean, again, anybody who's ever traveled to another continent at different time zones, it's basically saying you get that jet lag, you can't feel yourself. But imagine doing that all the time, like 2 days on, 2 days off, flying there, and it wreaks havoc on the system. So, what are some of the techniques to rebalance your body if you're getting into that? Let's say you're somebody who's listening is a shift worker, and they're working a factory job and they got a shift worker and they're doing all this crazy stuff. So how could somebody rebalance that system and make sure that they're eating properly, they're getting enough energy, they're trying to get some sleep. Are there anything, there are techniques that they can do?
Yeah, definitely. And I like the point that you brought up. This is good for anyone, because if you think about it, everyone has bad sleep habits. Not everyone gets the full 8 hours. And if you think about even students, right? Or people who are
Yeah.
trying to get work, you're studying, you're up late, or they're out partying or whatever. And then you don't go to bed till like 3, 4 in the morning. And
Are you talking from experience there, Amy?
well, I don't know about you, but when I used to study in university, I was terrible. You leave it to the last minute and you're studying up all night. Not the healthiest way to manage, but like I said, sometimes it takes a long time to get rid of your bad habits. So you really have to be intentional when you're trying to make changes. So some things that you can do, yes, is so first of all, if you're up longer than 17 hours, anything past 17 hours, everything starts to go down. Your cognitive ability, making like decisions properly. I wouldn't even drive after that, because it's literally like you're impaired. And so, anytime after that, like that's when people start making errors, judgment errors. People can get injured at work, those types of things. So as employers too, you want to make sure, what are the schedule shifts? How are they being covered? Are people being covered for overtime, or, are they operating heavy machinery or something like that at certain hours? So kind of be mindful, from liability standpoint too. But one thing that you can do is, so if you're doing night shift, so it's different depending on your types of shift. Like ours is the rapid shift. So it's, 2 on 2 off. So with the 2 days in a row, it doesn't give your body enough time to fully swing over into a circadian rhythm change, like to mess it up fully. So the idea is you really want to anchor to your daytime schedule. So if that means if I'm working at nighttime, so in the daytime, you would typically wake up, right? You would typically eat your breakfast. Maybe you would have some type of activity. Your body is used to being active during the daytime. It's used to eating during the daytime. Usually we eat like about 3 meals a day, right? So breakfast, lunch, dinner. So the idea is you want to kind of keep on that pattern, even on the night schedule. So if I typically go to bed, let's just pretend, I don't know, it's 10 o'clock at night. So you would, for the 2 hours before you go to bed at 10, 2-hour window beforehand, so starting at 8 o'clock, you want to limit your blue light. So like that's your phone, it's your television, your computers, which I mean, that's why you shouldn't really have a TV in your room, or you shouldn't be working. A lot of us work late too when we're on our computer. So if you are going to, you want to put blue light blockers on, like those glasses you can get, and it blocks the blue light, because blue light actually mimics the daylight. And that's sending a signal through your eyes to your system that to keep staying awake, it's going to keep energizing you, and then you're going to have a difficult time falling asleep. So especially if you have sleep problems or trying to get to bed at a certain time, you really want to have sleep hygiene where you're preparing your body to actually go to sleep, because then it's like, oh, okay, I'm relaxing, I'm unwinding. You're giving your body signals that, okay, it's going to be bedtime soon, and I'm getting into this routine. So you're actually preparing your body. One thing I didn't even realize too, so the eating portion is huge, okay? Because we have two systems that need to be aligned at the same time. One is the daytime sleeping, like the light and dark schedule, and the other one's when you eat, and they need to be aligned at the same time. So if you usually eat in the morning, let's say breakfast, lunch, and dinner, your body is anticipating the food to come at those times, which means that it's preparing your stomach enzymes and all these other things to like actually digest your food and use it to your advantage. If you are eating when you're like any time of the day, doesn't matter when, you're just kind of snacking, or you're eating at like 2 in the morning, terrible for you. You can't do that, because it throws everything off. And then that's where you start getting like digestive issues. You start maybe having heartburn and other things, because your body isn't even prepared to digest the food. It just sits in your stomach. It's not doing anything. And then your blood sugar level actually throughout the day. So your blood sugar level, it's the best to eat your biggest meal like first thing in the morning, because as you go through the day, your blood sugar level, like how you digest your food, is not as optimal. So you could eat something super healthy, let's say 8 o'clock at night, but it would be like triple the calories pretty much, because it's the time of the day versus in the morning. Yeah. So because you can't, is this, the way that it works is it doesn't have the same, I don't know the terminology, but it just doesn't digest it in the same way.
Well,
So
that makes total sense. Like, I
yeah,
mean, yeah, because
so you don't want to, yeah, so so anyway, so if you're working a night shift, you don't want to eat past, yeah, I would say the latest, maybe like 7 or 8, because, and I wouldn't go past that, even earlier if you could. So if, let's say you're waking up and you're starting your shift, like if you eat dinner around 4 or 5 usually, or 6, like try to stay within those time frames. And then don't eat anything for the rest of the night, because you're mimicking as if you were sleeping. So maybe just drink some water and wait until the morning before you go to sleep. You know, and initially you would have your breakfast, right? If you're like, okay, I really need a snack, I'm feeling, you know, okay, maybe do something healthy like an apple or something like that. But the signals of the cravings that we're getting is often signals that we're tired, not that we're hungry. So when we start craving these certain foods and we start just eating whatever at different times of the night, so you need to like tell yourself, I'm not hungry, I'm actually tired, and it's my body's way of kind of tricking me. But then you eat, let's say something sugary, okay, which is like the worst thing you could eat, like junk food or sugar.
what,
And sometimes
really?
that's it.
Oh,
I know, it's the only thing that's available. Let's say if you're a shift worker, or if you're the vending machine, right?
yeah,
Or
exactly.
the stuff that's open late, and it's the worst thing you can eat. Did you know that sugar has the same effect in your body when you eat it, the same as cortisol, the stress hormone? So if you're already stressed, you're in a stressful type of work or job, adding sugar to that causes even more cortisol, more stress.
Really?
So it's like the worst thing to eat. Yeah. Especially if you're like not feeling well and you're sick, it like drops your immune system, and then that's where you can really get sick. So like knowing some of these things, you can make better decisions at certain times of the day based on knowing like how it's going to affect your body. Some people
Oh,
don't care.
yeah.
I care.
Yeah. Well,
I
then
care
also,
because I used to suffer, and I don't suffer as much now because I'm aware.
are you finding a lot of your fellow coworkers are kind of are following your lead, and they're kind of realizing, oh, why is she feeling so chipper, and why she got so much more energy? And they're kind of asking, so Amy, what are you doing? Like, what's going on?
So I do share information when I chat with people, or we do the car to car thing, or you know, because I was working on a lot of wellness projects, so people ask questions, and so I will just share information with people. I will send them emails. I've created handouts, but
Do you
one
police
thing
the police?
I know,
Do you pull up to your buddy and go, hey man, are
right?
you eating those donuts again,
Get
man?
that donut out of your hand. No.
That's so stereotypical of you. Come on, put the donut and the coffee away. Come on.
Well, you know what, if people inquire and they want to ask me questions, I'm all about sharing information. I'm not going around there telling people how to live their life or what to do. Everyone's on their own wellness journey, and they have to figure it out for themselves. And if you're not in a state where you are ready to do something to make changes, then you're not going to make changes. So
Yeah.
if people approach me, but one thing that I'm going to start doing is I have so much knowledge. I just want to share it with people. So I'm actually in the stage right now, like I haven't really been on social media lately because I'm kind of just dealing with a lot of different changes, but I really want to put all the content together and be more strategic with sharing the information. So I'm gonna start, yeah, creating some content to start sharing some of this knowledge with everybody because it's needed.
Yeah, I think it's a really important thing. So one of the things I want to talk to you about too is about trauma reduction, and as far as the exercises and things you do. Now, I've heard a lot of amazing things that are out there. They call it trauma release yoga, or TRACE, trauma release exercising, or EFT sometimes, or EMDR. Are there any things like you practice that at all?
Yeah, so I'm certified in trauma sensitive yoga. I also have my corporate yoga certification, and then I have one that's called Gravity Yoga. So the Gravity Yoga focuses more so on, I guess, like training for flexibility, training for better mobility, because I find that even just wearing equipment or sitting in your car for long hours, you know, but I mean, like, who doesn't need that right now? Because a lot of us are looking over our computers. We got a lot of
Oh
text
my
net going
God.
on with our cell phones and stuff. Yeah. So it's just postures to rebalance your, even just your posture, and just even like your resting tension, like how you show up in your body, how you feel in your body, which I didn't know this before. It's over 50% of it is through your nervous system. I used to think it was just, I've got like tight muscles, or I'm sore, or I'm not as flexible. But you can actually retrain your nervous system and your flexibility by doing some of these postures and these movements. And the gravity yoga is you hold the poses for 3 to 5 minutes. So you're actually deep breathing and turning off your stretch reflex so that you can actually go deeper and change the shape of your fascia tissue, which is the tissue that surrounds your muscles. And that's what can, if you're trying to touch your toes or something, you're like, oh, okay, that hurts. That's what you're feeling there, is that fascia. So you're kind of rewiring the circuitry system within your wired nervous system by doing some of these poses. And then the trauma sensitive yoga is you're really trying to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So we have 2 nervous system approaches. When you're in that fight or flight, that stress response, it goes into the part of your brain called the amygdala. That is your sympathetic your sympathetic nervous system. That's why it's unconsciously responding. Your heart rate's going to change, your breathing's going to change, maybe slow, rapid, your eyes, pupils are going to dilate, you get really focused. So you really lose your surroundings and your senses because you're really focused on that threat, right? So this happens unconsciously. You don't even choose. It's like your heart beating unconsciously. You're not thinking to make your heart beat. It just beats on its own. So when you're in these stressful situations, and you don't have to be a first responder, it could be like an email or an argument with somebody, you can feel like your body triggers and it changes, right? And then your parasympathetic nervous system is the calm, relaxing, when you're eating, when you're sleeping, when you're intimate, those types of things, you're relaxed and you're calm, right? So the idea is to know what some of these hacks are so that you can actually flip it to the parasympathetic nervous system when you're actually in this fight or flight response. So you can notice, and that's why the mindfulness piece is so important, I find, because it's bringing a level of self-awareness. It's understanding how you respond, how you react to certain situations, and what does that feel like in your body and where, and what are the triggers and how. And so when you become aware of that, you can start to notice your body, and then you can breathe through it and do some of these techniques that I can kind of walk through if you want, that can help shift your body state. And anyway,
so basically,
again,
you're trying to stop it before it really blows up. So that's the mindfulness part of it. You can feel something coming on. There's a potential trigger, or there was a trigger. You can feel everything starting to physically hit, and it gives you a sense that, okay, I'm about to go down this rabbit hole. The body's going now, and it's like, okay, hold on. Let me just sit there and breathe for a second. Let me just catch my breath and just focus on what it is. Am I safe? Am I all right? And then continue on. Is that kind of the idea of it with the mindfulness?
Yeah. So with the mindfulness piece, it's recognizing so that you can be intentional and make changes while you're in it. So let's say it's an argument with somebody, instead of blowing up or reacting, you really taking a pause so you can respond instead. And it's like, you know what I mean? Because again, your fight or flight brain takes over, and your logical mind, the prefrontal cortex, where it's like language skills and these conflict resolution skills, go out the window. So what you're trying to do is really shift the mindset back into that section of the brain. So there's tricks that you can do. Now, if there's an actual threat, like you're in a first responder and, there's a fire, the firefighters going in, or you're at the scene of an accident and the paramedics going in there, or a police and someone has a weapon, your fight or flight's going to go off regardless. But through some of these techniques, instead of just preventing it, because obviously it's going to happen anyway, it's how do you can still make better decisions. You can be really present in the moment, so that your performance is a bit better. You're not underreacting or overreacting. You're actually using your 5 senses to make split-second decisions that could save your life or someone else's life. So it's really trying to bring this calm state into the chaos, really, to be able to perform optimally.
To be like the Zen master in the chaos, be the center of the storm.
Well, if you think about it, so it's nice to, practice, right, when things are calm and the lights are low and it's quiet. Oh, everybody, still, it can still be challenging, right, to do. But when you got you're screaming kids at the table, you're trying to feed them lunch, or you're at that call and shit's hitting the fan, then,
or in traffic even.
or yeah, road rage or whatever. Oh, I mean, you should see some of the road rage incidences that people, it's like, anyway, plus COVID, everyone's on edge. I've seen some things that shouldn't even happen. It's like COVID, you just got to blame it on COVID because people are just kind of at their limits. And
Yeah.
anyway, so these are things that you can use in these situations that can really just bring you back down, and handle the situation a little bit more gracefully and
Is
more
there anything
calm.
online right now? I know you're going to get your stuff and you're going to be able to, produce your own stuff and put it on. So if people are listening to this, is there anything that we can, they can probably go online and kind of go, okay, you can look at this video or something like that and just kind of help them through this?
If they wanted to do their own research on some of the information, you could look up polyvagal theory. So we have a vagus nerve that runs through our whole body. Like 80%, it touches every organ, every system. And there's this idea of like the top down approach, which is the mindful, your mind state, and then you're changing your body state through some of the mindful practices, versus the bottom up approach, which is, you just get into your body and start doing some of these tension release exercises, or you start doing these yoga poses, and that actually changes your mind state. Because sometimes, like I was mentioning, these experiences bypass your thinking mind, and it's absorbed through your 5 senses. So sometimes just getting back into your body, like talk therapy can be great for some people, but sometimes it doesn't work for others. So doing these postures, these movements can actually help release and recalibrate the nervous system without having to think about it. You just moving your body, feeling better. It can change your mood. So yeah, the polyvagal theory, you could probably look up. Even just like trauma, you could probably even just Google trauma exercises. I'm not really sure. There's not enough out there, I think. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's why I'm doing a lot of research myself.
Yeah, I stumbled on that by choice. I think I forget what the conversation was. I was watching a video, and one of the gentlemen was a soldier, and he was talking about the PTSD and different things like that. And he found out, like, just through the psoas muscle,
Yes.
and just all the tension and stress there, and he was stretching that and all the release he was having there, and he found out these exercises. They call them TRE, I guess, trauma release exercises.
So so tension release exercises or trauma release exercises.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm glad that you brought up the psoas muscle. So the vagus nerve and the psoas muscle is top 2. Okay. So the vagus nerve is like your trauma nerve. Okay. That's why when I'm going to show you a few different techniques you can use, bringing your hand to your heart center and putting pressure on it can actually calm you, because the vagus nerve runs through your heart center there. And so when it feels pressure, it's kind of like co-regulating almost. So anyway, I'll go in that in a minute. But the second one is the psoas muscles, and that's your fight or flight muscle. So it's the muscle that's underneath your pelvis. It literally holds the bottom half and the top half of your body together, and it protects the underbelly of all of your major organs. So obviously when you're stressed or there's a potential threat, it's going to tense, right? Because it wants to protect you, right? So what can happen over time too is it gets tighter and tighter and tighter. We're not rebalancing these systems. And then, as humans, so as when we're kids, sometimes you're scared, you kind of shake. But as adults, we kind of turn that off, right? But that's a natural mechanism to shake out the stress, shake out the trauma that's in our system. So it can actually get stuck in our bodies, and we can start getting like chronic pain. Our posture will change, like all these different things will change, not knowing. So yes, the psoas muscles, there's different release exercises. There's actually seven exercises you do in a row. And then you actually invoke the natural shaking mechanism through your psoas muscles by kind of like, when you work out so hard, your muscles shake a little bit. It's kind of like that.
Well, it's been a while since I worked out because of COVID. So I'd probably, if I picked up a weight,
like
I'd be
2
shaking.
bicep curls, mine would be the same right now. And so I got to build my strength back up.
Or understood about the psoas muscles, and it all kind of clicked for me. It really clicked for me. And that's where I held so much of my attention, so much of my stress. I had so much back problems. And once I did that, and I do it on a daily basis, first thing, it's like I'm stretching that sucker out. And I notice when I'm stressed or I got tension. And sometimes it's not even if I'm stressed, like I'm actually having good things, but my body's still automatically, it's that a subconscious thing, programming that kind of gets stuck in there. And I know when my back's starting to get out, I know that that's that stress. I got to get in there and stretch it out. But if you start doing it, it's at first it's weird because you think, am I shaking or is just my body shaking? Am I doing this? And it's just a weird to let yourself kind of go and let the body start shaking. And then the hips start going and you're sitting there and you're like, okay, am I going to have a seizure here? Well, what's going on? And then it starts working its way up and it's fantastic. I love that, man. And it's
I
actually,
love that you do that. Yes.
the thing is, I have to, it's a good reminder because I haven't been doing it lately and I know I should be done. So now this is like a good reminder to me. So I know first thing tomorrow when I get up, I'm going to start doing and really focus on it. I've been stretching, but I haven't been really practicing the exercises. So, but it's a good reminder to do that for sure.
And you know what? How much you want to bet if someone has like upper back pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, knee pain, lower back pain, it's all connected probably to the psoas muscles. And that's why if you have other pain in other areas, or even just doing some of these yoga poses, I'm telling you, a lot of it comes back to your hips, the hip flexors, your psoas muscles, because it's connected. They're all linked, right? So anyway, I would check it out, look it up. If people are not aware of it. And another thing that I find about this particular exercise, because I know they have the TRE, even like yoga classes too. It's because some of the poses make you feel very vulnerable because it's like, like you're opening up when you lay down, like you're laying down, you're opening up your knees a bit, which is very vulnerable position to be in, right? Because often we close ourselves off if there's a threat. We try to protect our organs, our reproductive system and those types of things, right? So when you're opening up and you're relaxing and you're allowing that to flow in the safety of your own home, right? Privately, I feel like it then allows us to be more vulnerable with other people, like in conversation or asking for help if we need it or those types of things. So if you can practice these types of things in your own home and the privacy, like I just feel like it changes you as a person too, with being a bit more comfortable to be vulnerable. And I think to be vulnerable is courageous. Like we all have stories to share. We all have certain things we've gone through. And that's why, I tend to be vulnerable and share some of the stuff that I went through, because it gives permission for other people, like you mentioned in the beginning, that's like, yeah, you know what, I have gone through some stuff too. And, I want to figure out how I can heal or be my best self and feel really good, so.
Yeah. So how hard was it you at first to be vulnerable and to open up? Because as somebody who's a first responder, you kind of have to have that kind of shield, that guard out. You got to have that presence about you to kind of protect yourself because you're in such a dangerous environment, a lot of the time. So how did you learn to really start and allow yourself to be that vulnerable and to allow yourself to be that way?
I guess I just recognize that speaking your truth can be honorable and like courageous just as much as, because in this profession, yeah, a lot of people want to be stoic and we're seen as the people that are called when you have to, like you're going there, we're problem solvers. We want to help people. People like try to lean on us. And then I think people in this profession too tend to be caregivers in nature, like even in your own family or like friend circles, you tend to be the listening ear or supporting each other or the mediator between family members, so you can take on a lot in this role. But I think it just comes down to self-care, really, because you can't be all things to all people all the time. And if you're not taking care of yourself properly, then how can you take care of other people? Like, how can I show up if I'm not doing this work on myself? How can I show up and be there for other people in the community? You need to have a level of strength or that resiliency. So, and then I think sharing, you know what I mean? Because again, we are human, right? So again, it's coming back to like humanizing that badge or humanizing this profession. And it's like, we're still people at the end of the day. And I think if we can be honest and show that portion of ourselves, then people can understand and relate a little bit better, you know, where you're coming from. Because I mean, like I said, everybody has stuff that they've kind of gone through, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, and I guess being confident in yourself too, right? Like I've always been the type of person that I'm going to do what's best for the greater good. And I don't necessarily, yeah, like you want to feel like you're belonging and you're liked and, you know, and you're part of a social group and circle. But I've always felt that like as a leader, sometimes you need to take the first step, or you need to be willing to feel uncomfortable or be uncomfortable to have others maybe lead that change as well, or to not have fear in maybe judgments, or someone's gonna, you know, not think, maybe, yeah, there's probably people out there that, you know, why do I do this work, or why, you know, maybe they don't agree with mindfulness, or maybe they don't agree with yoga or being on social media. Like not everyone's going to agree with the reasons why you do what you do, but for me, it's my passion and my mission is a lot stronger, knowing that I'm going to be sharing the information with the people who need it. And then as long as it can land and resonate with those people who need it, then I'm doing what is my truth. And so if there's going to be people that don't like that along the way, then that's fine.
Yeah,
Then don't listen.
there's always going to be haters. There's always going to be haters, and I
Yeah,
always,
hate is gonna hate.
yeah, they're always going to hate. And you know, one of my people I always watch is, I don't know if you know David Goggins.
The name sounds familiar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, he's a former Navy SEAL, and he's kind of got these really crazy, you know, screw everybody attitude stuff, and it's really good motivation. So it's not for everybody, but he just says, you know, you just got to, like, you know, he basically says, f the haters, and who cares what anybody else thinks? You got to do you. And he always said, so I always kind of watch his videos, because when I'm having a kind of a low day, somehow his videos pop up, and it's like, okay, just get my head out of my ass, let's just go.
Yeah.
And if you got haters, and hey, listen, I'm in the public now, and I'm putting a podcast. Not everybody agrees with my topics. Even the social media companies don't agree with my topics. But yeah, it's really interesting. So you just got to keep going through it. Like, you can't please everybody, right? You put the content out, and hopefully that's something like your story will go out there and help one person. Like that's the end of the day. I did my job too as well. So, but it's interesting enough. I had a conversation. I'll share this with you, because I work in the realms of the spirit, and I have a friend of mine, and we just had a conversation. She's actually a forensic medium. I don't know if you ever heard that term.
Oh, interesting. Is that like help solve crimes and stuff?
Yeah, yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So she actually focuses on missing children. So we had a conversation about this, because we do work in that realm. We actually get exposed to trauma too, as well. A lot of people don't understand that, because psychically we pick up all that information. We see some of the horrific stuff that happens to people, sometimes when they're alive, and also sometimes they're dead. And we were talking about that, had a conversation about some of the awful situations when you, obviously, you know, when you're dealing with children, you're dealing with death, or just in violence in general, you see that, and see that type of trauma, how it could affect you. And we had a conversation about that, and it was so interesting. And I said, yeah, I said, there are times where I really hate my job, because I don't want to see that, but sometimes I have to see it in order to help the other person through that pain. And she says the same thing. And, you know, we're very careful of what we say and what we can't say, but we were just telling stories, swapping back and forth, and it gets pretty nutty too as well. And that's, you know, having those situations and understanding that I have to make sure that I take care of myself, and developing those boundaries, because that stuff will stick with you. Like, I mean, those memories will stick with you over times too as well. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, because I just had this conversation with a doctor the other day. We were talking about different types of therapy. We're dealing with psychedelics, and psychedelics with PTSD, and ketamine assisted therapy. Have you heard of any of you guys? And I know you probably not going to talk about it, but I don't think that. But you've ever heard of any of your fellow first responders doing that type of therapy?
So I've heard about this therapy before, I think on Netflix. I think there was something I watched one time. It is interesting. I don't know enough about it. I don't know how it works. I think I watched a documentary just to understand that portion of it. I don't know if who's doing it or who does it, or if it's allowed in some places or not. I'm not sure what the process is fully for that. I'm assuming probably certain states or areas that have legalized, I don't know, those types of therapies. I'm not sure how that works, but yeah, I don't know too much about it. I have heard someone once mentioned, because there's people that will go to different countries too, and they'll do,
Ayahuasca.
yes, that's what the name. See, I wasn't sure what it was called. I wasn't gonna try to guess. I was gonna say, but where it's supposed to change your realm, it's supposed to help release maybe past traumas or experiences, and then it's like you have this shift. Again, I don't know enough about it, so I can't really speak to it, but I have heard about it.
I was just curious. Yeah, I mean, because you kind of work in that field and you got different, different coworkers and stuff like that. And of course you can't, they're not, nobody's, you can't say names and anything like that. But it's always interesting. Like I know a lot of the ex-military are using this type of therapy. And she was talking about the different studies with ex-military and some former first responder. And the doctor I actually was talking to, she was a former first responder. She was a firefighter before she went into medicine. So she talked about her own experiences too, as well. So, and her journey too, as well. So I thought it was just something interesting since we're kind of talking about trauma and first responders and just changing the nervous system. I thought it's a nice little segue because this podcast is after her podcast. So I thought we could kind of marry the two together. It's
fascinating though, like the different things that are out there and the different tools that people can use. Again, like I was saying, everyone's on their own journey. You have to kind of find what's best for you. There's no right or wrong with kind of trying to figure out how it works for you. I kind of focus more so on mindfulness, yoga, breath exercises, so more of like the movement type of stuff. That's more of the holistic approach. Not to say that like medications or anything, sometimes those are needed or people choose for that. Mine is more so I'm focusing on the natural, holistic type of, because I feel like our bodies are super intelligent, and if you can put them in the environment that they need, they can do a lot of self-healing on their own as well. So, and I feel like in our profession too, a lot of people will turn to maybe drugs and alcohol, the illegal kinds. And so the illegal kind, as if alcohol is not legal, it's legal, and so is marijuana now, but you know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's more so so when you're thinking about self-regulation, right, these coping capabilities, sometimes people will lean to external things like that, where maybe food or even sex or gambling or other types of things that maybe are not as healthy. And so when you can bring it back into yourself, so through these like movements, the mindfulness, the calming, and like bringing it internally, you're developing these self-coping mechanisms that are healthier, that are positive, that aren't going to cause more harm to your body, that aren't going to cause more harm to maybe your social circle and the people around you. Because what happens is those things are numbing effects, right? But if you're numbing the bad, you're also numbing the good. And then sometimes that can take over and it can turn into addiction. And, no one raises their hand and says, I tried drugs or I tried alcohol or I did this and, I want it to be addicted to it. Like it just happens over time. It can snowball. So recognizing that, traditionally, a profession where it would lean on some of those things, trying to get more healthy and more positive coping skills, to try to give, again, examples of tools that are out there. And again, people can pick and choose what's best for them, but if we can give them options, then maybe they'll find something out that works for them that maybe they weren't aware of before. Like you mentioned, the TRE and some other stuff too. So
yeah, I mean, it's amazing stuff. Even like I'm a big fan of EMDR. Have you tried EMDR or have you heard about EMDR?
Is that the tapping one?
No, that's EFT. So EMDR is basically it's kind of based on energy. It's called hopefully I don't bastard it. It's eye movement desensitization. Hold on, let me just figure this out because I always screw it up. EM. So eye movement desensitization and reprogramming. So basically what it does is it breaks apart the neural pathways in the brain. So it's usually through either ocular, so through your eyes, they have like a light thing that you balance up, and they also have either audio sensors and tactile sensors too as well. And they the idea is that when you go into a triggering state, let's say, for example, you had PTSD, a typical example is like, a soldier, is constantly in fight or flight all the time. They're in hypervigilance all the time. They see a pile of dirt and they're just obviously freaking out, right? So the trained therapist would get them into that. And before the brain can react, all the different sensors are going on. It's basically, it's basically just breaking apart that sensor. So instead of having that quick automatic reaction, from the amygdala and just basically just going squirrely, it basically breaks it down. It basically breaks apart that neural pathway. So it lessens the effect. So when you think about, like, if you see that type of trauma or something that happens, there's not that reaction anymore. So you can be more observant to it. And I've had used that in my own life, and it was a godsend. And I always, anybody's going through that, I think it's a fantastic therapy. And it can be really, really quick too, as well. And one thing I tell everybody, it's very exhausting. You get done with one session and you want to sleep because your whole body is resetting, the brain, the neural pathways in your brain are resetting. It's fantastic stuff. So any type of trauma, you're in a fight or flight syndrome, it's fantastic stuff.
I love that. Yeah, because our brains, so it's like neuroplasticity, right? It can change these new neural pathways, but the more that you do it and more practice, that the easier it is to shift over, and actually, like, you're making brain and body changes. It's so fascinating. And I think if you actually do a therapy where you've got guidance by doing that, it's like you'll change faster. Like, you'll be calm faster, like your body, like you won't have those reactions as much. And I mean, I don't know enough about all the different therapies, and I'm still trying to learn what's out there, but even just like cognitive behavioral therapy and those types of things, where even just like reframing, or because a lot of it is emotion is attached to memories or situations. And so it's like changing the narrative, because we have all these narratives about, and like, you can like, should have I done this? Should have I done that? Like, it's like you go over and over and over again sometimes,
Are you reading my mind? Are you like reading? Sounds like you're like, yeah, that sounds like my brain. I have my daily thoughts.
Like a hamster on the wheel. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's ways to get through it better. And so, and I think that, again, we've been in a society for so long where people are like, oh, therapy, or, I don't need that, or who does that? Or they're very judgmental. And it's like, I think I'm so supportive of it. I think if you need it in your life at certain times, it's like, yes, why wouldn't you do it? It's like not going to the doctors if you broke your ankle and not putting a cast on and then healing it and then removing it. And then, okay, you're healed, you're done, you're good to move on. It's like, we don't think of our mind the same way, our brain the same way, when there's a disconnect between, how the circuitry is functioning. And again, it's not our choice. It literally happens on its own. It changes. Trauma and stress changes your body and your brain.
Yeah. And I always say, try to mitigate it now. And even if, like, you think, oh, I'm too old, it's just the way I am, you can always change. Like, I'm in my 50s now. So it's like, hey, listen, I still work at it. And, because I want to be the best version of myself. I want to show up and make sure that I'm healthy and enjoy the rest of my time on this planet. So I think it's always important that you can do these sort of things, and to take time out for yourself and learn and educate yourself. Hence listening to the podcast here.
Yes.
And myself and Amy, and you get all this amazing information. And that being said, Amy, I'm sure we're almost out of time here.
All right. Well, that's too bad. Because I feel like I go on and on. I'm like, I've got so many more tools I can share.
Well, you know what? I want to get into, I always say this, I want to get into more of a longer format. But this is kind of like the sweet spot for most people. And after a while, they kind of get sick of listening to my voice and go, oh, geez, another 2 hours of this guy.
You know what they could do, though, because I'm going to be posting some actual tangible exercises that people can do. And it's not just like yoga and mindfulness. It's stuff that you can do anywhere, whether you're in your car, you're going into a meeting, you're just wherever, and you just need to do a quick reset. I'm going to start sharing some, like, even just a 30-second, 10-second thing you can do that will kind of help just bring you back to present moment. So yeah, you can go to, I guess, at the Yoga Cup. That's where I'm going to be posting my stuff.
Okay. Yeah. I was just going to ask you, so, like, so let us know if they want to find, now you also do speaking engagements too, as well. You speak too as well. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So I don't have a website created just yet. I'm in the process. But I'm on
Don't
LinkedIn.
worry, I don't have one either.
Okay. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. I don't really go on Facebook very much, so maybe reach me on Instagram instead. I'm more on Instagram.
And what's your Instagram handle?
I'm at the Yoga Cop.
Okay.
I'm on Twitter as well as at the Yoga Cop. But I would say my main social media handle is the Instagram one, if you want to reach me there, or even on LinkedIn if you want to send me a message. But yeah, I do public speaking. I'm going to be doing workshops soon, specifically on the stuff that we've been talking about, the holistic wellness, the mindfulness, the yoga piece. That's really going to give you tangible tools on if this is the profession you're going to be getting into, and not even just the profession, anyone really who works shift work, high stressful occupations, and or has been exposed to trauma or stress. If you're looking for some tools, because they're not readily available when I look, so I really want to bring that to the community. So yeah, give me a follow, and yeah, I'll be excited to just be sharing more stuff in the next year.
I look forward to that. I look forward to seeing that. And yeah, it's, I think it's going to be really well received. And I think a lot of people are looking for this right now, and especially this time. And I think we're all under a lot of stress. That's kind of saying it lightly. We're under a lot of stress, and we're getting out of the darkness and we're moving more into light. So we need all these little tools and tips and tricks and things to keep us moving, keep us healthy, keep our society in a much better state, and raise awareness and consciousness and all that good stuff. So Amy, I'm just going to close off the podcast. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was been lots of fun. And I'm just going to close off the podcast here. So this has been the Metaphysical Mentor podcast with Michael Philpott. Thank you so much for joining me, and goodbye for now.